Thank you, Jay. Thank you for the nice intro. Thanks to so many of my friends who've come out tonight. I think I personally know about half the audience, and I will tell you completely has nothing to do with our topic tonight, but in my teenage years, I spent many days in this building playing basketball for the Austin High Maroons, because we used to play in this very building when it was a gym. So there.
Test. Is this on? Okay, great. Well, Hugh, I didn't know about the basketball part playing in this gym, but I was gonna ask, so what's up? What have you been doing?
I have been on a 4-month coffee tour of Austin, visiting all the coffee places I never went to before, and catching up with a lot of old friends, and making a lot of new friends. So it's been nice.
And he came to my bar and had drinks with me recently, so I got to be one of the beneficiaries of Hugh's 4-month tour of catching up with lots of people one-on-one. First question is,
But we didn't have coffee, did we?
We did not have coffee. First question is going to be sort of an obvious one, which is it's going to harken back to your South by Southwest days. You did it for over 30 years. Started as music, started adding other layers into it and other complementary things, seemingly at first TV, film, things like that, then added technology. I distinctly remember when technology got added. What do you think, how would you describe, what's the most special thing to you about what South by became in terms of bringing all these different elements together and these different people together in one place, in one festival, people sitting adjacent to each other with completely different careers and interests and stuff? Share a little bit about how that became even more special over the years.
Well, I always thought, or always think, that ultimately the best part of South by Southwest, the magic of South by Southwest, is just the community and communities that it helped create. And that started when it started as a music event in 1987. We added, as you said, film and multimedia in 1994 and brought more communities into the mix. In more recent years, I've been particularly proud at how much the international participation for the event has grown. The last couple of years, we were about 25% of the badge holders were from outside the US. And I just think anything that brings together different kinds of people and shows that gives them a place to connect face to face, and shows that they have a lot more in common than they have differences, has always been important, and even more important in today's world. So always really proud of being able to do that, and doing it in a city like Austin that has always cultivated and celebrated creativity, made it all the more special.
I've always liked how you said that the common theme in South by Southwest was creativity. And at first, I didn't, of course, get that because I didn't go to the music festival or even the film. And I'm a huge film buff, but I didn't go to the film festival at first. I started and was drawn in by the tech part. And then, of course, you started adding comedy tracks and food tracks and all of these other things. But what do you think are some of the interesting sparks that came out of bringing these very different folks together? I mean, there were days where I could walk by the convention center and look and say, okay, that person's for tech, and that one's for music, and that one's for film. And they weren't always talking to each other, but surely conversations happen, friends got struck up, et cetera. What do you think are some of the interesting side effects? Did you see any major things happen out of this, or do you think it was more of a subtle influencing perspectives for everybody within their career tracks?
Yes and yes. I think the challenge or one of the challenges that we always face at South by Southwest, or South by Southwest always faces, is getting people to get outside of their networks, outside of their comfort zones, and connect with other kinds of people. And so that's always been a point of emphasis, or was a point of emphasis, of try to go to things, go to sessions that you don't know anything about, go to music you've never heard of, go to films you may not be familiar with, and thereby create those kind of really important connections that can lead to lots of new ideas, lots of new opportunities. I think that's what we do really well at South by Southwest. That said, it is a challenge, particularly when you have that many people, to create those kinds of spaces where people feel comfortable connecting with folks they don't know.
I definitely had a lot of fun with that over the years. I'm sure my early years, I focused on tech sessions, and I'd carefully make my calendar and program of the talks I wanted to go to. And the frustrating thing was that there's always 7 talks that you want to go to at the same time and different buildings, and you're evaluating them carefully and trying to decide which of these 7 do I go to and which is the next closest one if I don't like the one I'm in that I might be able to get to. But I did end up over the years finally giving up on that and thinking about it's not how much I miss, it's how much I get out of it, and ended up on a boat on Town Lake with a singer from Mexico that I met while having lunch during a break between 2 tech sessions and such. Those are the kind of things I like.
Okay, point of reference for anyone who hasn't figured it out yet. This man to my left is one of the biggest power users of South by Southwest out there, who spends more time browsing through the schedule than almost anyone else who's not on staff, who knows exactly what is happening at any given time, who again has all kinds of great ideas on content we should do. If you ever want to know more about how to do South by Southwest right, this is the man to talk to.
I have terrible FOMO. So the advice that I've learned to give people is stop worrying about what you're missing and just enjoy all the minutes that you're there. So that was my biggest piece of advice to people, because the first few years had anxiety about all the good stuff I was missing, because the program is so full of great stuff. And you cannot, let me just be real clear, you can't see it all in a festival that big. You're going to miss lots of good stuff. You have to get over that and say it's not about what you miss, it's about what you see. Go ahead.
Absolutely. It is not fear of missing out, it is joy of missing out.
So before we before we get into some of the stuff about more general about the present and about your future, I do want to ask you 2 more questions about South by that might be things we could use here in the Austin Forum. Sort of the lessons learned. So what is one thing you wish you'd done differently if you were doing it all over again and running something for 30 years? What is one different path you wish you'd taken?
I think.
Are there any?
Yeah, there's only one mistake we made, or that I made. No,
I meant more fundamental. I'm going to ask you about mistakes next, but I meant like any fundamental directional.
I think that in the big picture, we hit a hockey stick of growth shortly after Twitter had their moment at South by Southwest. And that was
how many of you all know what he's talking about, the Twitter moment at South by Southwest? That was a wonderful and fascinating memory.
Twitter kind of launched at South by Southwest, and that really changed the dynamic of the event, where so many startups wanted to come to South by Southwest to experience the same kind of buzz and bump in usership that Twitter had. So many VCs wanted to come to South by Southwest to discover the next Twitter. Again, that led to, we were kind of growing like this, and that led to boom, and really fueled our growth for the next 7 or 8 years. I think in retrospect, we could have been more strategic and a little better in terms of putting some guardrails on that growth. We went from a medium-sized community to a really, really big community. Those are changes that are really hard to execute successfully. We generally had the philosophy that you didn't want to, quit selling badges because you wanted people to buy badges. And in some ways that, I think, degraded the user experience. Of course, none of that seemed obvious at the time. It was just like, hey, we planted this beanstalk and the beanstalk never grew before, and then all of a sudden it's growing like crazy, and why would we want to stop the growth? But I think it's, again, in retrospect, I think we could have done better at that. And I think that, in many ways, you can use that as an analog for where we are in the city of Austin, or where we've been in the city of Austin, where we have seen these huge growth spurts at various times. And They are neat that so many people come to the city and decide they want to be part of our community, but they also put some very significant challenges to the quality of life and the creativity that has made this place special.
And what are some lessons you've learned along the way? Not that fundamental one about the growth, but other lessons you've learned along the way that everybody here should consider, perhaps, if they're planning not just festivals and conferences, but meetings and events and such. What? Give me your best Priya Parker right here. If these people are gathering folks for events and things, what are some lessons you've learned along the way?
I think that, probably the biggest single lesson or biggest single thing to think about is less about trying to build events and more about trying to build experiences. That is what made South by Southwest and what makes South by Southwest so cool. It's an experience. And that was a lot of the work that we would do as a staff. It was also a lot of the work of the sponsors coming in to build these things and to create these very, very cool experiences. But I think that's whether you're going to a business conference or something that's a mix of business and fun like South by Southwest, I think an experience will resonate with people much more deeply than simply events. And I also think that for event organizers, and I don't particularly like that word event because I think it should be experience. So for experience organizers, realize that it's the networking portion is ultimately what's the most important to people. There can be great information at conferences, but networking is really, really where the extreme value is. I have started following a guy out of Toronto in the last 2 or 3 weeks. His name is Misha, and he's pretty easy to find by that. And he is a event architect or experience architect. And one of his statements that I really like, or one of the things that he writes on his Substack, is every time you do a panel, you are cutting back on time where people can network. And so again, think of that. Think of giving more opportunities for people to network, to interact, to make those connections. One of the things that we did in the earlier days of South by Southwest, and at some point we made the decision that this was not the right way to go, and it's a decision I regret, but we used to have these things called core conversations, and that is a wink or nod to my love of alliteration, which is I love alliteration because I don't remember things well, but when you have alliteration, you can kind of do that better. Core conversations, the whole idea was you just got people in a room, you put a circle of chairs around the room, and you had them discuss a topic. And that was really, really good for people to make connections, for people to exchange ideas, to argue about things. We ended up, why did we do away with those? Because they became they unfortunately kind of segued more into pitch sessions, and that wasn't something that people liked. Corporate pitch sessions. But again, my big point here is networking is a real value, and certainly in today's environment, it's hard to get people to get on stage to make announcements. Tim Cook is unfortunately not going to come to Austin, unlikely to come to Austin to South by Southwest to talk about the next iPhone. So it's networking over newsmaking. In my mind, you may disagree with that, Jay, as the
you know what? Just to make it fun,
organizer of the Austin Forum.
We have networking after all of our events.
You do, and that's a great thing about the Austin Forum.
I can't totally disagree with it, but I do want to make I'm going to play devil's advocate here. It's not fair now because I live 8 blocks from what was the center of South by Southwest, the convention center. I'll have to ask my South by experts what the center is going to be this year. It should be Remedy Bar, by the way, but I'm not sure what the center is going to be this year.
You mean the big cavity downtown?
Yeah. Yeah, I drove by it the other night. I was like, wow, that I didn't even see it start coming down and it's down. But for me to go to a place, absolutely, I love the word experience. An event is something that occurs between a start time and an end time. An experience, though, is something a bit more than that. So I like that phrasing. I've always thought it was important when a speaker speaks, just as you and I are doing right now, and there's 100+ people listening. It's important that we have something worthwhile to say. They're giving up time, and time is looking around this room. I'm willing to bet that for between 99 and 100% of you, time is your most valuable commodity. And so, sure, the event is free, but time is valuable. You can't get it back. So it's on us to make sure that we're sharing useful insights. So I value events that are experiences in the sense that I'm going to get some insights that I wouldn't be able to get from going to the coffee shop or the local bar or one of those things. So the kind of speakers South by's attracted have always been interesting to me, but also the kind of attendees it has too. So it's been a balance for me. If it was mostly networking, I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it. If it was all talks, I wouldn't have gotten as much out of it. I always thought that it hit a pretty good balance. I didn't think there was a lot of formal networking time in it, but you can only get into so many sessions, and I'm going to get to that as one of the lessons in a second. You can only get into so many. So sometimes you're networking when you didn't expect to. You didn't get into the session because Hugh didn't save you a seat in the keynote session, for example, or something. So you're stuck going to get coffee, and then you strike up a wonderful conversation. Most of my networking at South by, though, was accidental. It wasn't in any kind of structure. I did go to one of those core conversations, though, in the old days. I think it was called the Austin Formula, and it was a session entirely about, in a very different Austin 20 years ago, what makes Austin special, what makes it different, what is our secret sauce and whatnot. And I would argue, still remembering that session to this day, not all those things are the same anymore. Capitalism, growth, all those kinds of things. But I like that. I like the emphasis on networking.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get to individual networking in a second. But do you think South by provided the right amount and the right structure of networking? And what might you do differently in that as opposed to the serendipitous, Jay didn't get into Amy Webb's talk for the 4th year in a row, so ended up meeting somebody over coffee?
I thought it was 5 years in a row, Jay. Yeah, we certainly in recent years and probably again in 2026. And if you want more 2026 information, you should talk to Michelle and Alex over there. Raise your hand. Yay, yay, yay. We did a lot more meetups with the idea that you were giving structure to people who wanted to connect with other people in whatever community they were in, or meet other people in a new community. I do think that so many people have that experience at South by Southwest or other big events where the person they met that was the most valuable to their career was the person they met in line. I think that, that serendipity is really neat, but that's also, I think there's a portion of that. It's like you're at this huge event and it's kind of sometimes overwhelming, and you tend to bond with people around you and make friends that way, and often find points of interest, and that leads to lots of new things. So a little of both there.
Let's take it away from big events for a second. And you mentioned you were on your coffee tour and that you have been catching up with people one-on-one. And of course, even at these big events, you have these one-on-one conversations. How do you describe the value of a handshake or a coffee with somebody? Or I do it with whiskey a lot. I always find that after 2 whiskeys, I really start to get to know somebody. They stop holding back on where they're being a little hesitant. They realize they're in a safe space. And I usually quiz them about the whiskey to distract them a little bit too. What are you tasting and whatnot? And I usually get really good conversations of that. But what do you think is the value in people setting up these one-on-one conversations and going from handshake to coffee or handshake to a beer or whatever?
I just think ultimately that is the one-on-one, face-to-face beer, whiskey, coffee, drink of choice. It is a little less transactional than the kinds of connections that we make via the various tech platforms we use. Our mutual friend, and I think a lot of people in the room know this person, Tom Singer, who heads up the Austin Technology Council, wrote a great piece in Medium last week that is titled something like "The Handshake is Still Our Best Technology Ever," which again, I really believe in that wisdom, that for all the different ways we have to connect with people now, and those are valuable in all kinds of ways. Face-to-face interactions are still the most powerful, and that's again, that's back to your initial question, Jay. That the face-to-face interactions that can happen in a community such as pull together for South by Southwest, or even for the Austin Forum, those are amazingly valuable, extremely important.
Agreed. I think almost everybody would agree that in-person interactions are the most effective. When I was working at Dell as the pandemic ended, it was the sales team that was most eager to get approval to take trips and meet customers again. The engineers were like, yeah, work from home. That seems okay to me. That's all right. But the sales staff could not wait to get back out and shake hands and meet people again. But coming out of that pandemic, we actually kept one online thing that I thought was really interesting, and it was these online book discussions. So those of you who've been with the Austin Forum for years will probably remember that we did not shut down the Austin Forum when the pandemic happened. We went to online because we decided some avenue for community was more important than no avenue for community. And so I'm not putting social media or video meetings or any of that above in person, but how do you see those playing a role in community building, especially in times where maybe in person's not practical?
Yeah, I mean, your word earlier, balance, and it is certainly nuanced. Our first year back, the first year for South by Southwest back post-pandemic was 2021. It was an entirely virtual event. 2022, we did what was very much in fashion with everyone at that point, a hybrid event, which was half in person, half virtual. The real great thing about the virtual stuff is people from all over the world could participate who couldn't travel to Austin. Ultimately, we made the call that, as important, as cool as that was for people all over the world to participate, that our biggest strength was face-to-face, and we were going to push a lot more in that direction. We were still doing a lot of streaming stuff, free streaming stuff that allowed participants from around the world, but really pushed more in that direction. Let me also say, as my continue to call out and embarrass people in the audience, if you want to know a lot more about the strengths and weaknesses of what we did streaming and creating an online event, then talk to my friend Justin Bankston back there, who headed up technology for many years and really was the mastermind behind a lot of the really cool stuff we did there. Yeah, as you say, it's a balance between these things. And again, lots of great ways to get the global community involved with South by Southwest and with the Austin Forum with virtual events, but on balance, I think face-to-face is more valuable.
We've gone back to these main events being in person only because of the value of that, and the turnout has become larger again as we've gone back to in person. I think maybe some people were using the fact that we were streaming them as an opportunity to get a little bit more work done and save a little bit of time. But on the flip side, they didn't get the same experience. Since when they started coming back, they talked about how great it was to come back. But I do have to put a plug in for the other side of that. We have these online book discussions, and actually Hugh is hosting the November one. And there's a wonderful person who has no idea I'm going to say this, and we're not streaming this live, but her name is Becky Cooperman, and she lives in Colorado, and she's on most of these monthly book discussions. And I wouldn't know Becky if it wasn't for this, and I wouldn't get to hear her viewpoints on the different things that arise from every single one of these book discussions. So I love in person when it's feasible, but I'd also rather be connected to people that are just interesting and fascinating, but don't live in Austin if there are effective ways to do that as well.
Sure, and I think that at the risk of contradicting myself, which I do often, look, in the go forward, it may be that travel becomes more difficult for a variety of reasons, and that attending experiences virtually therefore becomes again has a lot of value. So I don't want to put any absolutes on this. I just think that if travel is possible and if you can bring people together face to face, that creates such an amazing thing. I also think that, you know, you said it a few minutes ago, Jay, but just making this abundantly clear, and I think most of us understand this, is that we are generally, again, a lot more decent to each other face to face than we are online. Social media has created a lot of the ability to not be civil with each other, and in that sense contributed to a lot of the divisions that really tear our society apart. So again, my love of or attraction to face in person experiences is very much in the context of those many problems. And I'll also say that, you know, I have no small amount of, maybe guilt's not the right word, but you know, South by Southwest really was at the forefront of social media. And we thought it was the best thing ever at the time. If you think of one of our biggest achievements as an event, as an experience for South by Southwest, it was when 44 came to speak at the event, Barack Obama in 2016. Why did Obama come to South by Southwest? Well, a lot because he was a huge believer and proponent in technology. And most of us at that time thought that these new social media platforms were going to bring us together. We're going to make the world more of a global village. And they've done a lot of great things, but we've got to admit that a lot of the worst case scenarios came true there, and with social media, and again, trying to having helped create that world, trying to create a slightly better world where people interact face to face.
Yeah, I know what you're saying about social media, and I appreciate that you said that it's done a lot of great things too, because we all find out about activities like South by and Austin Forum and these things. It's a great way to find out about things and connect to things that you then go to in person. It's probably a topic for another day, but one day we should, since you were part of the explosion of Twitter, and if you want to know more about that, ask Hugh, get him a whiskey afterwards and ask him about the South by where Twitter blew up. To me, that one is more of, like you said, people behave better in person than they do online. And so moderation controls should be put online to guard people from their worst self online when they don't fear any repercussions. By the way, LinkedIn is overall pretty civil and whatnot. People on LinkedIn are worried that if they misbehave there is a guard. They will not get that next job if their employer goes. And more employers go and look at LinkedIn profiles. So the conversations on there seem to be far more civil and far less divisive there. So I still maintain there's a place for social media in the world, not replacing in person and not even replacing interactive video. But I think we have to solve the problems of misinformation and AI generated misinformation and anonymity, allowing people to be their worst selves, and the fact that content moderation goes against making as much money as possible, and algorithms that encourage diverse schools of thought and exposure go against making as much money as possible because rage sells and things like that. So that's probably a whole nother event. We should do an event on that.
Yeah, as you said, another event for another time, another conversation for another time. I will say that I agree with your perspective, Jay, that LinkedIn is much more productive in many ways because there is moderation there. Let's try to push moderation on other platforms. And I also think let's learn our lesson from the problems, the challenges of social media, and not be completely averse to putting some guardrails and guide rails on our the AI platforms that we have out there now. I mean, unregulated, without any kind of guide rails and guardrails, this is going to AI's the abuse of AI is going to be and is significantly worse than the abuse of social media.
And in fact, that was going to be my next question is in this era of you're talking about human interaction, especially in-person interaction, which is by definition an authentic interaction. People can lie about who they are, but it's harder in person, and they tend to behave better. They tend to at least be there. Maybe they're even being a little deceitful there and being their very best selves, but they're being human in those human interactions. How do you think that AI is going to diminish the value of human interactions? Do you think it will, or do you think it'll have the opposite effect of people treasuring those authentic human to human moments even more because they don't want to see AI generated people and hear AI generated conversations and read AI generated content that was technically token for token, a quite reasonable probabilistic string of tokens that were spat out. But in fact, we're not done with any authenticity of intent. So how do you think AI is going to weaken or strengthen human interactions?
Well, I think the optimistic perspective there is that as more and more interactions, for lack of a better term, become human to LLM or human to AI or human to whatever, that human interactions, therefore, they become even more valuable, right? And that events that bring people together become even more valuable. I can see that. I can see how that process works. I also think that there'll be nuance there. We are still at the very tip of the spear on this AI revolution, evolution, whatever you want to call it. And it's already, for a lot of us, a little bit difficult to understand, is that real or is that AI? So that's going to get even more sophisticated. But again, I think we know that everyone in this room is a real person. And again, that's a premium experience. Then we'll see even more of that in the future.
So in this city that has so many experiences and so much technology and so much AI now, what events, or I should say experiences, do you think are doing things right, are taking into account the importance of human interactions, of using technology but in appropriate ways to create better experiences? Who, as you think about what you're doing next, and we're getting to that, but what do you think, who else besides South by Southwest? Who's doing it right? Who are some things that we can learn from and that all the people in this room can learn from, as well as enjoy the experiences of?
Well, I think there are a ton of really compelling events / experiences out there. Spring 2025 was the first time I'd ever been to the ATX TV Festival. If you've never been to that thing, I encourage you to go. It is a smaller, bespoke experience. It is really neat, really fun, really great community there. I was extremely impressed. And I've become pretty good friends with the organizers of that in recent months, so really impressed there. And then insert Spy Magazine joke, log rolling in our time, Jay. I think what you've done and created with the Austin Forum over the last X number of years is really important, really special. The things I like here: it's cheap to attend. Wait, it's actually free to attend, so it's open to anybody. There's a lot of networking involved, both before and after the event. There's relevant content here. And to hear what you said in the introduction, that you're exploring other venues, it goes to people in different places. has really amazing content. So again, props to you. I also like that there is a cadence on this that is, if you want to go to these things every week when they occur, or every 2 weeks when they occur. I mean, one of the challenges of an event like South by Southwest is that it's great, but it happens once a year. And what do you do for the other 51 weeks of the year? We have some community meetups, that type thing, but again, that regular cadence, if you're going to talk about the importance of community, that is extremely important also.
So let's talk a little bit
All
about.
right, that's all I get for propping the Austin Forum. Come on now.
I wasn't sure how to handle all that praise, so not very good at that.
Checks in the mail, right?
I do appreciate that. I think that we've done a lot of things right here, and I think we have a lot to learn as well. I thought we handled the pandemic really well. We could have easily shut down, and I think we decided that some community. I think we decided there that no community, virtual, online, interactive community, and in-person community were like that. So we got most of the value of community in a time where we couldn't get the full value. So I think that was one of the things that we did well. And I like that now we're doing multiple kinds of events, because there are some people who, for very good reasons, don't leave their house to come to events at night. It could be traffic, it could be jobs, it could be childcare, it could be health issues, it could be any number of things that I don't know about. But still having some online events for that option that encourage everybody to speak as peers. There's a moderator for sure for the book discussions, but there's no presenter for it. So I think we've done a lot of things well. But I like the people from ATX Film Festival too. They host a Survivor night at our bar on Wednesday nights, and I do not like that show, but I love that crowd. They are so kind and funny, and they cheer, and the people in the other half of the bar are like, "Who scored? What happened?" And it's like, there's not a game on in there. What was that cheer for? And we have to. They're really funny, and they have a community around that. And
they have a community, and again, doing something on a regular basis to maintain the momentum of the yearly experience, I think, is really great and really important.
So let's talk about what you think you're going to do next. You've definitely established a company called Grow and Gather. I love the name.
No. Gather and
Gather and
grow.
Grow.
Get it right.
Gather and Grow. G&G. I got the G&G. I'm a big fan of the alliteration too, but
alliteration is where it's at.
Gather and Grow. Tell us about Gather and Grow.
Well, the idea when I left South by Southwest in late April, and it was wonderful to have a lot of people in the community reach out to me, and that felt great, and began to think, well, what am I going to do next? And the idea was to leverage the expertise, quote unquote, that I developed at 35 years at South by Southwest, and moreover the experience of those 35 years, and help other people, other organizations, other events put together compelling gatherings that would, again, promote this idea of community, which I think is so important. I've been very, very fortunate that I've probably had 50 people reach out across Austin, across the US, across the world, who want to do some kind of experience. Most of those are very much in the idea stage, but the number of people who have reached out is certainly evidence to me of how important these face-to-face, how many people realize the importance of these face-to-face experiences are. Presently, we've got 2 clients for Gather and Grow. One is a event called Your First Million Live, and this is an event organized by a woman named Arlen Hamilton, who has spoken at South by Southwest many times. Arlen's origin story, with the context that origin stories can sometimes be a little bit inflated, but she experienced homelessness for several years, and then she pulled herself out of that and eventually created a VC fund. The VC fund particularly focuses on women, people of color, and people from the LGBTQ community. And as a lot of people in this room who are involved in the startup world can say, those communities typically get about 1%, if even that much, of all the VC dollars. So I love Arlen's focus on this event. She did one of these in LA in 2024. The next one will be April 2026 in Los Angeles. So I'm helping Arlen on that one. And then also working on a event in Sao Paulo, Brazil called SP2B, which stands for Sao Paulo Beyond Borders. As as people in the room who've gone to South by Southwest know, Brazil has become the biggest international delegation at South by Southwest over the last few years, but that's still a small fraction of people from Brazil who would love to have South by Southwest type content. Brazil had put together a very strong bid to host an event there. We, because I was at South by Southwest at the time, said this is great, but let's pump the brakes for a few years on this. We're expanding internationally a bit too quickly. They decided to do the event on their own. And then when I became a free agent, they pulled me in to help on this. So I'm really excited to work with the creative community and the startup community in Brazil on this. The first Brazil event will be August 2026. They are south of the border, so their August is winter, and it's a great time to be in Brazil. And again, really excited about how that will play out.
And I'm really looking forward to you asking me for help on that, by the way. Never been to Brazil.
Brazil is a great place, Jay, and be careful what you ask for, as always.
So one of the things that, it's real easy. How many people have lived in Austin here longer than 10 years? How many have lived in Austin longer than 15? Longer than 20? So still a good number. So especially if you've lived here longer than 20, you probably have earned the right to do a little bit of, I remember when it was, like this or that or the other, because it has changed. It's been actually my favorite bumper I ever saw at the South by Southwest Film Festival. And they always had these great creative bumpers. But it was one where I think this guy from New York City goes to watch a film. And he's wearing a suit at the beginning and he's on his cell phone saying, yeah, I'm in this, yokel town. I'll probably just stay for a day or two and then I'll head out of town. Then they show him the second day and he's a little more disheveled. He's like, yeah, I got caught up here, but I'm probably going to stick around for another couple of days. Third day, the jacket's gone and he's making excuses on the phone. Fourth day, he's got queso stains on his shirt. By the fifth day, it's like, this town has changed so much. It was my favorite bumper. And I think even if you haven't lived here 20 years, if you've lived here a short period of time, you probably see the changes.
Yeah, if you live here 5 days, you get the right to say it was better 5 days ago, right?
It was a great commercial, bumper. But, obviously it's changing. And, one big question is, do we even earn the right to use the slogan, keep Austin weird anymore? South by was always a huge part of weird, keeping it creative and weird in the sense that it covered so many different things, unlike every other festival. And there's lots of bespoke festivals, as you mentioned, that you might not find in other places. Even the dining industry kind of embraced it here with these weird concepts for a long time that I absolutely loved. Different themed restaurants and different things on the menus. And I still see some of Austin persisting in this. My favorite whiskey distillery, Still Austin, down in the St. Elmo's neighborhood, they decided to add a stage and they have live music and they really support it's a distillery. They support the arts there. They make sure they name their company Still Austin for a reason. How can all of us support the efforts of things like South by Southwest and ATX Film Festival and companies like Still Austin? How can we do our part to keep Austin weird, if that's not a bad word to you and it's not to me, or at the very least, keep it creative and not turning into, and I'm a techie, but I don't want it to turn into just any other tech city that brags about how much venture cap funding is here or how many $1 trillion tech companies here. How can we all do our part to keep it creative and weird?
That's a great question, Jay. And I like where you went with the keep Austin weird, keep Austin creative. Let's give credit where credit is due on that one. That was something that I first heard Mayor Watson say back in his first term, that keep Austin weird means keep Austin creative. And I've stole that line many times, but very good. I think that, two very important things that there, one that we can control, the people in the room can be part of, the other that we can't so much is, and start with the thing that we can't so much or need our local leaders or local developers to help with, is what is put some real severe constraints on the creativity / weird factor of Austin is affordability. When I grew up in Austin, when I played basketball in this very building a mere 100 years ago, the value proposition of Austin was it was a incredibly cheap place to live, right? I moved away from Austin several times in my early 20s, and then I would always come back because I don't know what I want to do, but this is an easy place to live. I can do a part-time job and get enough to pay rent. The most famous, the defining movie of Austin from the 80s was Slacker, right? Which, celebrated this culture where people could do nothing, but in doing nothing, they were becoming creative. They were thinking about their novel, their band, or whatever. Austin's not a slacker city anymore. Austin's a city that you need to have a job, and a pretty good job, to afford rent or afford mortgage within the city. I'm not going to be one of those people who, again, Austin, I'm not going to be one of those people who says that Austin is so much better. It was so much better when I grew up. There are a ton of amazing things that have happened with the growth, but that affordability picture where we have pushed the artists, the bands, the filmmakers, the novelists, the writers, the photographers, whatever, if we push them out of the city to the suburbs, that has really changed the dynamic of the city. And if we want to keep Austin weird, keep Austin creative, keep Austin as this place that attracts energy, entrepreneurism, new ideas, new ventures, then we've got to figure out a way to create more affordable housing within the city. I know lots of people have worked on this, and it is a really, really hard problem to do, but we've got to continue to pressure our lovely elected leaders to push on this. So there's that. The thing that we can, I think, control in the room with people in the room is that spirit of community. I think that for all the changes here, we are still a city that believes in this mantra that a rising tide lifts all boats. We help each other out. We value cooperation over competition. And I don't think that's the case everywhere. I think there is something here that a lot of us in this room have fostered, that pushes that community spirit, and I hope that will continue to be something that defines us. And if so, I'm very optimistic and bullish on the future of Austin, Texas.
That's
Whoa!
applause. Is there anything that you think we can do? I 100% agree on the affordability of housing issue, but I don't know how to fix that one other than vote for somebody who that's the primary plank in their campaign and hope that other people in their districts do the same thing, and then hope those people live up to those promises when the developers come and, talk about, oh, we can't provide that percentage anymore, but how about if we plant some more trees or something like that? And I live in one of these buildings downtown. Right. I moved into one before there were a lot of buildings downtown, and it didn't take over any La Zona Rosa or Liberty Lunch or anything. That took over a used car lot. I felt pretty good about that. That was fine. Plenty of used cars.
And the other little bit of a lever that seems like we're exercising a little more now is creating more transportation options. So if you can't afford to live downtown or in the city or within 5 miles of downtown, you can easily get downtown. And, we're seeing slowly some progress there.
So, are there any ways that you're thinking that tech, do you have any interesting ideas and ways that tech might be able to be part of this? This is the Austin Forum on Technology and Society, and you hit transportation. One could argue that these different transportation options, most of them are enabled by tech and can perhaps enable people to more cost effectively get from places they can afford to live to places where they can make some money performing. I just came across a tech company that I have no stake in it. I don't know the people in it, so I'm not advertising for them, but I guess I am because I think that they did a really good job. There's a company called Gig Finesse, and what they do is they help place musicians in hospitality venues. So we're going to start using their service and at our bar and start having a musician come in on Music Mondays, because we like alliteration too. So Music Mondays, we'll start having, and keeping it in the Austrian tradition, it'll probably Bourbon and Blues Music Mondays in the beginning and having some Texas blues style music in there.
I've
Are there
seen it.
tech things that you could recommend people to start a company to help solve X or Y or something that might help keep creativity in the heart of the city?
Well, I've seen to the company you were talking about. I was lucky enough to go to one of the Friday morning at Mozart's, where great connection of people there. And there's another app out there that helps that hires musicians to do home improvements. And I met the founder of that app, and they seem like they're pretty robust and have developed quite a community on that. So again, I think that unfortunately, the music community and the tech community are a little bit siloed now from each other. And if we can somehow create ways for those communities to interact more aside from just a nightclub when one is playing or whatnot, and create some alignments there. I mean, one of the things from the past of Austin, and this is probably a little bit myth of the golden past, but if we remember the myth of DKR, Darrell Royal, the old football coach, was that he his love of Willie Nelson brought together kind of the progressive hippies and the rednecks, and created some interesting communities there. I don't know that we have a leader yet in Austin who is, for instance, bridging those communities of the tech world and the music world. And if anyone in the room can do that, then wonderful.
Yeah, if anyone can do that, we'll definitely give you a stage for it. Some of you have been in the Austin Forum for a long time, might even remember we've done 3 different events on tech and live music, including an event that Charlie Fay performed at, and she was on the panel for. We had various folks on that, Steve Sternshine of Empire Control Room, or I think it was, or was it Vulcan Gas Company? One of those two. We had multiple, we had musicians, we had music news writers, we had venue owners, et cetera, and we couldn't crack that nut. So that's one that, after 18 years last month of the Austin Forum, I'm still disappointed we haven't cracked that one yet. And I hope that we do. We've had some great events on tech and film, and we've had great events on tech and art, but we have not been able to do something that I thought moved the needle on tech and live music. And I'd love to figure that one out.
And I will just back at you, Jay, that is going to become even more important in the go forward, with the context that these AI platforms that can do so much for us, and we should be excited about that. But look, they can wipe out our creative community, and are wiping out our creative community at an incredibly fast pace. If AIs that can put together film-ish content that can put together music, that is a huge threat to this celebration of human creativity, which is always what I thought South by, or what I think South by Southwest is. It's what I think the Austin Forum is. It's what I think so much of Austin is a celebration of human creativity. So again, that bridge of understanding and cooperation between the tech world that's in Austin and these creative communities in Austin, building that bridge has never been more important than now.
I'm going to ask you two final questions, and then we're going to move to the audience questions. One is, there's a lot of challenges in the world right now, and you're a big fan of human connectivity to foster creativity and innovation and collaboration. Where are you personally right now on a sort of a 1 to 10 scale? Where are you on your optimism, pessimism meter for things being better in 2 years versus worse?
I'm a 5, I guess. So glass half empty, glass half full. There's, on the one hand, I think that, as we talked about a few minutes ago, the movement towards more AI content, more non-human content makes that demand for human stuff even more so. And so I think that, or I'm cautiously optimistic that will push more human to human connections. That said, at the same time, many things make me more pessimistic, not the least of which with all due respect to the tech industry, the push for abolishing all regulations on AI. I just think that's foolish, and I think that's a path to the bottom.
And my final question is, what activities do you have coming up next? We're gonna get to some Q&A, but where can if these folks haven't gotten enough Hugh tonight, where do they get some more Hugh?
It is hard to imagine they haven't got enough of my blathering. Again, we're going to do the Austin Forum book reading on November 23rd. Yes, I believe that's
I think
it.
that's right, Monday, November 23rd. Yeah.
Or it's
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
It's on our website.
The book is Cal Newport's newest book, which is called Digital Minimalism. I am a huge fan of Cal Newport. Actually bought probably 20 copies of one of his books for fellow South by Southwest staffers for years. And Jay can probably remember this. My secret sauce, secret power, low ego remedy was I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would email everyone at 4:30 in the morning. I was like, see, I'm better than you. I can email you at 4:30 in the morning. And then, having read Cal Newport, I realized that was on me to be trying to do that. So one of the things that learned from the Cal Newport is, only email people. Try not to email on the weekends. Try not to email after hours, so we can have sane work-life balance. Again, we'll be talking more about that in late November. I'm also going to do a talk with Josh Baer at the Tribune Festival. This, I believe, is it's coming up soon at the Tribune Festival, and this will be on the state of Austin Tech. And then Austin Tech Week is coming up in about 2 weeks, and I am excited to talk to the former Shazam actor, Zach Levy, who's building or trying to build this Wildwood Studios in Bastrop. This will be if all goes according to plan, it will be a movie studio. It will also be a housing complex and regenerative farming, all kinds of cool stuff. Zach is a very interesting person. I don't particularly agree with his politics, but he has come out, the stuff he talks about his community very much aligns with my thoughts about community. And I think this is what we need to do, is engage with people who have slightly different opinions with us and find middle ground. And so encourage people to come out to Austin Tech Week and see me talk to Mr. Shazam about Bastrop.
All right. Thank you for answering all of my questions. And now I'm going to ask you some questions from the audience, and there's a lot of good ones. So if you see me looking at my phone, I'm not checking baseball scores. The Yankees already lost, and I'm happy. So I'm checking the questions here. I think this one from Gerald Welch is really important. What was your best game in this building, and did you play after high school?
What was my best game in this building?
Your best game.
My best game. I got that.
Yeah, I don't want you to answer for your team like you're going to likely do, or you can do that too. But I want to know what was your maximum points you scored in this building?
I don't know. Probably I was a low score, so probably 10. But I actually this building before it got redeveloped into ACC, it would host City League basketball games. So I ended up playing City League well into my early 40s and played here 2 or 3 times a week. And one of the downsides of this building is a basketball court is like the walls at the end of the gym were like 2 feet beyond the basket. So there was lots of injuries of people, hitting the wall. But lots of great memories from this building.
All right, I had several questions from folks who really liked.
But I don't think that gets this up as a list badge. Sorry, great question, but I don't think it gets this up.
Maybe if you'd gotten like 30 points, it would have gotten it. There were a lot of questions that were similar. I'm going to bin these, so this question won't win the badge because I'm binning multiple people. But the question was, from in some form or another, they all liked you differentiating between an event and experience, but they wanted you to say more about it. What are some of the characteristics that transform an event into an experience? Can you say more about that? In fact, one person said, "Can you say more about that?"
I mean, I think the experience factor, which really has come to define a lot of what happens in March in Austin in the last few years, is things like, the in 2025, the Museum of the Future that the folks from Dubai brought here, that you went in and you saw this amazing experience of this kaleidoscope, the Ferris wheel that one of the HBO shows, I guess it was Mr. Robot, brought to Congress, of course the Westworld experience, where a lucky handful of South by Southwest registrants got to go out to the small town and just be immersed in Westworld. So again, those aren't really, those are experiences, and I would even say immersive experiences. Again, anything that creates a sense of interaction between the attendees and other attendees, the place. I think those are much more experiences. Again, events are simply, an event is going to class and hearing a lecture, and I think that most of us are less inclined for that at this stage in our lives or our life journey.
Gosh, I want to push back on that a little bit because I was an undergrad at the University of Virginia, and I would say that some of the lectures I had in history and Western political theory, they were experiences.
They were experiences.
They were amazing, and it's interesting how you can have the sage on stage model, but if that person is so good, so compelling, and understands how to tell a story, that's still an experience. I will go hear a great solo speaker, even if there's no networking beforehand or afterwards or anything else, if that person is great at telling a story that also conveys some great information and inspiration.
That's a good point there. And I will say that I went to a workshop last night at the Quincy about how to become a more powerful speaker. And the line that the organizer used is, your goal is not simply to disperse information, it is to create transformation. So there.
Now, there was a great corollary question. Justin, and there's no last name, but Justin asked, Hugh, how do you square the enhanced value of in-person community building against the fact that it only helps people with the time and means to participate?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think that again, back to my props to Austin Forum, when you have experiences such as this one, where the barrier to entry is relatively low, i.e., no cost, that opens up that experience to a much wider audience. There are so many great things about South by Southwest, but one of the challenges I think it has is that the badge price is self-selects on who the audience is going to be. The company has made some great changes this year where the badge prices have come down, and that'll open it up. But again, if we're trying to get more of those creatives from Austin and from around the U.S. and around the world that make Austin weird, make whatever weird, they need even a lower price, and that's a challenge. So again, things that can bring people together, experiences that can bring people together at a low barrier of entry are huge.
I love that answer. Everybody knows that South by Southwest Interactive is one of my inspirations for creating the Austin Forum. I say it almost every month. And Hugh pointed out, it's free, and we've always made it free. The only time we ever charge for an event is if we do an extra event at a place that charges us and we just can't cover it in the budget. Like if we want to show something at Violet Crown Cinema, then it's extra and outside of our budget. If we can't get a sponsor for it, then we will do it. But I want to give our sponsors some credit here. I'm not asking for an applause. I will do that later, but I'm not asking for applause right now. But I want to give them credit because they got this too. They got this affordability thing. Is very important, and you want an educated citizenry. You want people to be educated and understand the issues of the day. And with tech issues, they're changing so fast that you have to do as much as you can to make it possible for people to learn as much as they can about the fundamentals and the impacts, at least. And so that is why we do this. And I like to think it's one of the reasons you approved us providing a free South by Southwest badge for the question of the month every month, so that somebody that might not have the means could still experience South by Southwest. And I want to thank Alex over here for continuing that this year, because, and this is the absolute truth, I have gotten numerous comments over the years from people who have said, I could never have afforded to have gone to that, and it was life-changing going to that. So I wish I could actually, are any of those folks in this room right now? Oh, one of them is in the room right now. All right, thank you. So those comments mean so much to us when we get those, and we know we're doing something good. And thank you for making that possible. And Alex, thank you for continuing that as well. And also, I want to thank everybody else that's not sponsors, but that has helped us in some way. We decided to experiment with something and have a voluntary contribution program for this. There's no fees, there's no membership or anything, but we have this Friends of the Forum thing. And Jessica Sager, a managing director a few years ago, she kept nagging me to do that. And I said, I don't like people asking people for money. The sponsor's taking care of us. I don't like doing that. She said, Jay, people keep asking you if they can contribute. Give people away too, and then you can expand the programming. I was like, oh, okay, we can do more events then. And I didn't think it would work. And I have a slide of the newest Friends that we're going to show in just a little bit. But the Friends page on the website is really long. It's people that have given $100 once. They only have to do it once for life. They're on that page forever. And it's worked. Some people have come back and done it again. And we think we provide great value and great experiences and great content like your insights here. But I hope that we can figure out models like that. I'm actually looping it around to that question. I hope we can figure out models where we can figure out ways to make experiences free so that we don't have the problem posed in that question, that only the people of means can benefit from the experience. There's got to be other models. And I think we found one here, and there's probably other models as well that I haven't thought of. But I hope all of you will think of that in experiences that you create. How can you make sure that everybody has a chance to benefit from them and the human connections they make, the creative sparks they get, et cetera? And we're open to ideas for the Austin Forum too, always on these kinds of things. And hell, every 2 years I create another new organization or something, it seems like. So maybe I'll use some of those ideas in another thing, or we'll do it together if you want. So thank you for that question. Let's see. Tal asked an interesting question. Connection, community, and culture are often built from groups that share a belief system or shared experience. For example, politics, religion, or niche interests and activities. What are the strengths and weaknesses that the tech community has relative to those other drivers of community building? So instead of having a common belief system like religion or politics or something, what does the tech community have that is a strength and or a weakness relative to these other communities that have a strong belief system?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the upside of the tech community, it's somewhat speaking in generalities, is there's this idea that you can create with enough ingenuity, with enough entrepreneurial acumen, you can create solutions to some of our most difficult problems, and we've seen that with startups. A slightly different answer to that question, which is where I thought he was going with this, is I do think that one of the weaknesses that we had with South by Southwest under my leadership is we became a little bit of an echo chamber. And we needed to do, we should have done a better job at reaching out to people who thought a little bit differently and making them feel welcome at an event like South by Southwest. I think that, again, if you're talking about the importance of face-to-face interactions in terms of building a stronger society, a more functional society, then it can't just be with the kinds of people who mirror your beliefs. It has to be at a slightly larger level, and I think we sometimes didn't do as good a job of that at South by Southwest as we could have. So I hope that that will be something that the organization works on and improves on in future years.
Awesome. Another question. In hindsight, was there an emerging content track you wish you'd given a chance?
All of them. Gosh, I think that as context for this question, we organize conference content into tracks, and tracks were or are probably more helpful internally in terms of who programs what than the outside world probably didn't understand the tracks as well as we did. I think we've gotten, South by Southwest got better, a lot better in terms of defining these tracks in recent years. And that's in the context of going back 20 years ago and looking at some of the tracks we had and going, oh, these are so weird. But, you know, we did food for a while, then we cut food out, then we brought food back. We did sports for a while, we cut it out. We've now, I think South by Southwest has brought that back. I think that ultimately, kind of a different answer here is a mulligan here is I think we should have just figured out kind of larger tracks and had fewer of them. That might have been easier for people to understand than having so many tracks, which are hard to understand. But again, the unifying element of all these tracks was that they were celebrating a different kind of vertical of creativity. And as long as that is the underlying mantra of an event like South by Southwest, I think it has a ton of relevance.
Awesome. All right, two more questions. Oh, this one hits close to home for me. How important is a physical hub for creating the community at a deep level? I'm a big fan of third places, and they're usually physical places.
That is a great question. And back to where you were 15, 20 minutes ago, I think we'll learn a lot of that in March 2026 without a Austin Convention Center to host South by Southwest. Convention centers are cold, sterile, unfun buildings, yet you can do a lot of things there and creates a space. On the flip side, for 2026, South by Southwest is creating these things called clubhouses. Again, Michelle and Alex can talk to you more about that. That'll be a great way, I think, to bring people together. The other things that have become incredibly popular at South by Southwest in the last decade or so are these international houses, which typically happen at bars, which are a much more conducive atmosphere towards socializing, making connections. So yes, the physical space is, I think, important. And again, I think we'll learn how important this coming spring.
I got to see that in the South by context last year when it became a gathering place at Remedy for things. And I appreciate that about what you said about the convention center, but there were so many other hubs too that I feel like that one's going to be okay. We'll see. Last question. We have these events and moments that make people feel good and connected for a short time, and then we return back to the real world. How do we build something that is continuous for connections that last?
Great question there. I think that the answer to the question is the question itself. You've got to trying to create touch points that go beyond the mere days of the event, days of the experience. And again, that's one of the reasons that I think what you're doing with the Austin Forum is cool, is because you basically have a touch point. Don't go longer than 2 weeks without some kind of touch point. I think it's neat what you said about Emily and Caitlin of ATX TV Festival, their touch points with their community. It's one of the reasons that I think the panel picker stuff at South by Southwest has been so successful because it created a touch point with the community at a time of the year where there normally wasn't a touch point. So again, the idea is there, or the solution there is just being much more strategic and intentional in terms of figuring out those what those touch points are and leaning into those as aggressively as possible.
And now for the moment of truth. Which one of those questions do you think should win the badge to South by Southwest 2026?
Wow.
I let Alex and Michelle pick a lot. You get to pick this last one.
I'm going to go with the second to last question about the importance of place.
About the importance of place. And that one was, who asked that? Oh, Susan Meredith. All right. Congratulations.
Congratulations to Susan.
So congratulations to Susan. Let's give Hugh a round of applause for sharing his time with us.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for the nice words.